masters, masters, masters of change.
Hello there. Welcome to Masters of Change. My name is Kim Cunio and I'm the head of music at the Australian National University. And I'm here with my good friend Charlie Hogg. And Charlie is the director of the Brahma Kumaris here in Australia. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you, Kim.
Well, we've been having a very nice discussion in our last episode about balance, and I think it would be nice to continue that so we can do a real theme on becoming more balanced in our lives. And I wanted to ask a first question to you. Could you describe someone you've met who's incredibly well balanced?
I can, and I tend to feel I'm thinking of a person as I speak to you. A person who knows how much time to give to whatever is in front. And so they seem to know the needs of others, so they can tune in and they spend time with others. They seem to know when work really needs to, I really have to focus. But most of all, they seem to be able to really know what I need at any point of time, you know? And that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because sometimes I need a little bit of solitude. Sometimes I need a little bit of company. Sometimes I have to extend myself for somebody to really help them through a situation. Sometimes I have to really lock myself away to finish work for a deadline. And I feel that I'm thinking of somebody who I found had a very responsible position, and yet she would always seem to be relaxed and seem to do so much, but in a very easy and relaxed way. She was always sort of, and present. You know how sometimes when people are over busy, you talk to them, but they're all over the place, you know? But if you spoke to her too, she was present for you, which I think is the secret of successful relationships, that if you've only got 2 minutes to talk to somebody, you actually make them your world and you actually are present so that they feel listened to, they feel validated, they feel valued. And so it's a lot of wisdom, isn't it, to just know how much time to spend on what.
Charlie, you brought up something really quite profound for me in that answer, which is if we want to do a lot in life, first of all, we need to examine whether we need to do all of that in life.
Yeah.
But if we do have to do a lot in life, we need to be sort of counterintuitive. When we're busy, it's like we have to prove how busy we are to everyone, don't we? It's like, look at me, I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off because I'm so important. And yet what you're saying is that even when we're busy, maybe more so when we're busy, we need to slow down.
Absolutely, Kim. And you know, I think maybe in one of the earlier episodes, we had I found a very rich discussion about why we're so busy. Because I think that, I think for many of us there's a deep emptiness inside, a deep vacuum. And you know that it's a very uncomfortable place and so how do we deal with it? What's the strategy? Maybe in contemporary language they call it depression. When you go into this sadness, this emptiness, just keep busy, just keep rushing and running. Because it's sort of, when you stop and give time, you stop the superficial stuff and you just descend into this uncomfortable place. And you don't really know how to manage that uncomfortable space. So you just go back to this rushing and running. And I honestly believe the reason we're so manic today is not really that we've got so much to do. Because I know some people with a lot of responsibility, they're still quite calm. It's because it's a strategy to deal with the discomfort I'm feeling in life. And it's a well-known fact that men who are unhappy in the home, their marriage or their family life's not happy, they lose themselves in work. And they will cleverly justify a whole lot of reasons why they're at work, why they're not at home. But the real sort of seed is the discomfort that's happening and they don't know how to manage it. So it's an escapist strategy.
Charlie, this is quite interesting because I think there's a funny thing that goes on for many of us, which is that on some level, we know that we can look after ourselves better, and we know that this is an illusion, right? Like, well, first of all, it's easy to get the illusion, or easier, about here I've got a new car, and we all know that eventually the new car won't be new and we'll lose the joy of it. But the illusion of, of being important and busy is maybe a little bit harder because it's sort of glamorous, isn't it?
It is a bit glamorous.
Yeah. But in the heart of it, we know that it can appear selfish to care for ourselves.
Yeah.
And others might think we're being a little bit selfish by doing this.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, I think this is the heart of our episode today. How do we actually care for ourselves without thinking that we're going to be selfish?
Yeah, I think that, I went to a Christian school. I was educated at a Christian school. And quite honestly, I think there was a subtle or not so subtle message we were given that life means to give to others, which is a beautiful thing. But in losing that sort of giving to the self, so to speak, in denial of really helping myself. And I think it's not an uncommon thing that if I spend time to care for me, I feel a bit guilty. I feel a bit self-absorbed. So I do, rush, run, help. But at the end of it, I feel absolutely wasted and unhappy. So all we're saying is that there's a balance here. It's not selfish to care for myself. Actually, it's the opposite. It's the greatest wisdom because investing in me will automatically invest in my family and work. Because if I wake up and I nurture my heart, nurture my mind, care for my conscience, then when I step back into the family, I'm a very sweet person. But and you know what it's like, if I come home from a difficult day and I feel a bit irritable, frustrated, and then I splatter that all over my family members, it damages my family life, and deep down I feel really bad about it. I might be, externally angry, but deep down I'm angry at myself for, so it's not selfish. And I think in the spiritual practice, it's something I've got to realize actually it's an absolute common sense.
Yes. Really, what you're saying to us, Charlie, is it's the opposite. It's actually selfish not to care for ourselves.
Yeah.
If we don't care for ourselves, we're being selfish because we're holding up some funny version of ourselves. Maybe it's overly precious or it's a low self-esteem, but there's something that's not quite right that enables us to allow ourselves to get hurt.
Yeah.
And then when we most need our energy, there's none left. So I'm going to ask you to help me with a little role play, Charlie. I'm going to pick up my water, which is my daily energy, and I'm going to get you to say the word busy, and each time I'm going to take a sip. Okay,
Yeah.
So please.
Busy, 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 busy.
Now, could you ask me for a glass of water? Oh, I'm sorry, Charlie, I have no water left. And it seems to
Very
me...
good, Kim.
This is what we do, isn't it?
It is.
So we are spending our essence. We are spending our inner bank account every day if we're not careful. And then when we meet those who most need access to it, they're just getting the little drips at the end of the glass.
That's
it's so
exactly.
sad.
It is sad, isn't it? Yes, I mean, Kim, as we've been talking, I think the whole notion of spirituality is this wonderful education about me. And that when I function well, I'm a wonderful being in this world to give. And, so spending time, I love what you said, spending time for me is actually the opposite of selfishness because you'll be such a wonderful parent or partner or child or whatever, and you'll be a wonderful colleague too because you've actually, you've really looked what I need and you're filling in and the gaps in yourself and learning about yourself. So I think it's a really important thing to really look at this belief inside my head that if I'm not sort of always doing things for others, that it's a selfish notion because it actually makes you have nothing left to give to the people you really want to give, just like you drink all the water.
Yes.
Same thing.
Now, Charlie, one thing you talk about very nicely is it's sort of like checking in as our own inner doctor.
Yeah.
And you use the term, which I find really inspiring, taking our inner pulse. So I'm going to ask you, could you talk us through how you would suggest us to check our inner pulse now?
Yeah. You know, Kim, what I what I do in the mornings, just maybe to tell you a little bit of my routine, I wake up very early, like about 3:30 a.m. Now, I'm not expecting all of you out there to do this. I'm just sort of sharing my routine, and I have a little cup of tea, but I'm sort of preparing myself really to meet my beloved, so to speak. And I just love to sit so simply, so quietly, and I just love to withdraw and just become the eternal seed, you know, the soul, and resonate on that incredibly still, calm, centered, content frequency, you know, just I then feel loved by God. And once I've done that, sometimes I begin to then sort of look at some of the practical stories going on in my life, and I just really feel I'm in a state of self-respect, I'm in a state of objectivity, and I really can make, you know, decisions about my life, where to put energy, where to put time, what I need to change, even sometimes how I need to respond to a person a bit differently this time. So I often feel I'm sort of tweaking my inner world and learning, and even I find if there's a problem, I always find that if a problem comes up and you think about it on the spot and you're not in a really great state of mind, you don't get a good solution. But in the early morning, with that detached objectivity and that sense of peace and the sort of the love of the divine, I feel I can work through a good solution for a problem, whether it's within me or within somebody else. So that, I would say, the foundation of a day is the early morning. It's almost like that's where I serve myself. The rest of the day I serve the family and my workplace. And I do that with a full heart because my heart has become full in the early morning. Now, that's maybe theoretical because obviously there's different things that happen in life, but I would really encourage anyone who's listening that often we think, oh, I've got this problem, this is happening, we just can't stop thinking about it. But if I put a structure in my day to move forward spiritually, to me what really works is when spirituality, you know, is not just a hobby or a discipline. I put a little structure, it's like it becomes a lifestyle. I'll build it into my life to sustain me and therefore basically sustain all the responsibilities I have too.
Yes. Charlie, in the past you've talked about that spiritual fitness leads to mental fitness, leads in some ways also to physical fitness, that when we look after our spiritual selves, inevitably we want to look after all the aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
So you do get up earlier than most people, but I have just a really practical question. If, you know, my lifestyle says I really can't get up at 4:30 or even 5:30, maybe not even 6:30, will I still get a benefit starting at 7 a.m. With meditation?
You know, Kim, I always remember Dadi Prakashmani, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris. She was in Australia once and she met a lot of actors and musicians, and they said, oh, Daddy, we have to work until midnight, you know, that's when our work is. She said, no problem. Whenever you wake up, make it your practice to have a proper meditation. So whether it's at 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 8 a.m., rather than just rushing into the day once again, so my mind is not prepared with the right vibration for the day, I meditate. And I would say also a little bit of study. I think that you need to sort of have some stimulation spiritually for your thinking.
Yes.
So that structure is really important, I feel.
So you would mean engaging with the wisdom of great spiritual teachers. Is that what you would mean?
Yeah. I mean, every day I listen to the versions which we have in the Brahma Kumaris and all our centres around the world. I would read that, and that always makes me reflect. And I have one or two themes for myself through the day, and sometimes just one sentence just triggers, and it's building all the day. Because I think that's, I've noticed, Kim, that how the mind wanders into wasteful and negative areas. And I find that if I keep this little sort of bubbling thinking about a spiritual subject, it sustains me, rather than us starting to analyse what so-and-so said, process what happened in this meeting or situation, where we over-process everything. I think we over-analyse. Actually, analysis is brilliant, but it should really take a few seconds. But we will go over and over. It's like a rusty record. We go over and over and over again, justifying a state of mind or a position I've held or the reason I reacted, and trying to prove to myself that I was right often.
Yes. Well, it's like we have an experiment and we get addicted to the experiment.
We do.
So the experiment is, what happens when I have this conflict? And then I seem to have forgotten that it doesn't go very well for me, so I do it again, and I do it again. But why do we do these things? It's sort of like we're walking down a pathway, we see a hole in front of us, and we're ready to step around it, and we still fall into it.
Yeah.
So why do we do that, Charlie?
Well, this is, I think, a very interesting subject, because in the soul, Kim, we have the mind that receives the information, the intellect assessing the information, but we have our sanskaras, which is like our subconscious. So we've developed our own hard programming, basically. So, in psychology, they say do something 20 times, it becomes a habit. So someone does something, you get irritated. They do it 10 times, 15, 20 times, and almost before they do it, you've already decided you're irritated, and you keep falling down the hole rather than, and so we have numerous addictive habits and behaviours that I often think they overlay on my present. I wake up in the morning, I do my meditation, but sometimes that habit's pretty strong. It overlays, and I say something nasty, or I get really hurt by what you said. And so I keep falling back into my old programming. This is actually the deep work of spiritual life. Almost what we're doing is reprogramming ultimately my sanskaras, so that if someone insults me, I don't take sorrow. If something goes wrong, I let it go. Rather than my ego saying, you can't say that to me, so I justify, I'm going to hit back at you. But they've made a mistake and I make an equal mistake.
Charlie, that might be one of the best advertisements for meditation I've ever heard. Because really what you're saying is there is a free solution for most of us. And of course, some people have significant mental health issues and they'll need, significant support. But for most of us, what you're saying is that we can achieve huge, huge benefit through regular meditation and this of taking the spiritual pulse.
Yes.
And if we want to, we can take the physical pulse while we're
taking
the spiritual pulse. I mean, it's almost too good to be true, isn't it? That there's something that doesn't require medication, that doesn't require us giving our power over to someone else, that literally just requires us to be fully present with ourself and God. If we can go to that step, and that things will inevitably get better. How come this isn't on the front page of every newspaper, Charlie?
Well, it's the culture of the world, isn't it, Kim, that because of lack of self-respect, we feel to be productive, I have to rush, produce, be out front, be noticed, be recognised, because I sort of am building up an external identity. Whereas I think when you rebuild your internal identity, all that comes into perspective because it's all very temporary, You build up your image, you build up that, but in this world, people will pull you down, and then we get so frustrated and angry and hurt and all these sorts of things. And that's where I think that the more I really take time for myself, have this incredibly deep understanding, as you said, Kim, it's not selfish. In fact, it's selfish not to give time. It's selfish for your family, and so because you will be a much better person. All those sort of things. Once I heard a quote from John Lennon, which he said something like, "Life is something that happens while you're busy making plans."
Yes.
Remember that quote?
I do. It's a
Famous
profound teaching, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's what we often do, planning this, planning that, but I'm not happy while I'm doing it. What about now? What about investing in how I feel now rather than hoping, well, if I do this, if I do that, if I get this job, if I make this money, if I buy this house, I will be happy. It will never, ever, ever happen.
Charlie, I have another John Lennon quote. I want to match you with my love of John Lennon. I'm just sitting watching the wheels go round and round. Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
So on some level, this is, this to me as an artist, I say that it's, meditation is so profound. Sometimes the joy of looking in nature, which is the ultimate artwork, or the joy of looking at a beautiful painting or listening to a beautiful piece of music, these things can also help us, can't they, Charlie?
They can, yeah. They can, definitely.
Yeah. So I think it's that time, the time I most look forward to, where we meditate together. So dear friends, Charlie will lead us on a balancing, beautiful meditation, exposing that there's nothing selfish in self-care.
Let me sit quietly and consciously step back from distractions, from the thought, I have to do, I have to do. And let me open the thought, I'm going to be. The more I'm being peaceful, the more I'm being loving, the more I'm being kind. This being will flow into all my doing and make my doing rich and meaningful. And so, to become the master of being, I have to give time to me. What does that mean? It means to sit quietly in the early morning or when I get time and put a full stop to analyzing myself, analyzing others, analyzing situations and outcomes around me. And begin with the realization I'm going to take power during this time. And to take power, all I need to do is feed my mind with healthy thoughts and pure thoughts. Pure thoughts are like energy that makes me feel happy and peaceful. The purest thoughts are the thoughts of self-awareness. And this is a lifelong education to realize and experience that I am the eternal soul. And to really feel the love and belonging of my eternal parent. And when I learn the art of self-realization and also experiencing myself in love with one, my heart is full, my mind is peaceful, my conscience is clear. And I step into each day with a fullness, some spiritual treasures that I've gathered. And throughout the day, whomever I come in touch with, through my face, through my eyes, through my vibrations, I enrich the atmosphere. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Charlie. Once again, when you say Om Shanti, there's a whole teaching in there. That if we are to be balanced, if we are to care for ourselves, it starts with a simple realization that I am beyond this body. I have an eternal self. That eternal self is pure. That you, whoever you are, whatever your life has been so far, you have the same right as Charlie and I and Shivani and everyone to be happy. Isn't that incredible?
Mm.
We all have this right and responsibility to be happy. So Charlie and I, we ask you as your brothers to take the time to care for yourself. Om Shanti. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks again, Kim. Wonderful. Thank you.